Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Neutron Perspectives, and today we're going to be discussing episode 8 of the Adventures of Jimmy Neutron, The Phantom of Retroland, and my son, the Hamster. So, The Phantom of Retroland begins with Jimmy's class doing oral presentations. Basically, each of the presentations the students do are meant to be on historical figures in Retroville or just around the world, with Jimmy even doing his report on the guy that discovered that the Earth spins via use of a pendulum and dominoes. And if you expect me to remember the guy's name, I'm not good with history and I didn't write it down in the episode. Point is, it bores everyone in class. However, after Jimmy is Nick's presentation, and rather than doing an oral presentation on an actual historical figure, he instead does his oral presentation on an urban legend that surrounds Retroland. Namely, that if you are in the park around midnight, then you will be stalked by a phantom that will basically hunt you down and eat you, which is the titular Phantom of Retroland. He walks around in a black cloak, he has a salami for a leg, and he has a creepy little mask. Of course, Jimmy being Jimmy, he thinks that the whole thing is just bullcrap and calls Nick out right in front of the whole class, which... this is one of the few times where one of Cindy's callouts feels very much warranted, because... yeah, Nick may not have done a report that he was supposed to be doing, since I'm assuming that the class was actually supposed to be looking at actual historical figures and not urban legends. But it's still his report, kid. Whether it's good or bad, you need to stay silent during the whole thing and let Miss Fowl grade whether or not it's actually worth giving praise or crap for. As such, after class is done, Jimmy once more talks about how the Phantom of Retroland is bullcrap, and we also see that his locker is apparently a fucking TARDIS because an entire drawer comes out where he has a bunch of inventions, which I questioned initially, but then going back to the theory I presented when I talked about the movie, about the government possibly subsidizing Jimmy for his inventions, I wouldn't be surprised if they bailed him out a little bit by giving him the extra space for that, and considering that the school is vested in Jimmy doing well, and the principal is very much proud to have Jimmy as one of their alumni, I wouldn't be surprised if he looked the other way if he gave Jimmy a little extra space for his crap. However, as Jimmy is talking about this, Cindy, Libby, and Nick come up, and Cindy and Libby just call Jimmy out on him being a jackass like that, but Nick instead offers Jimmy a challenge, a triple dog dare. He thinks that if Jimmy is so sure that the Phantom isn't real, then he'll have no problem, just going to Retroland and proving that it's not the case. And Jimmy says he'll do it, with Carl and Sheen coming along as his witnesses, something that the pair of them don't really want to do, but they end up doing anyway. As such, that night, Jimmy ends up sneaking out of his house and meets up with Carl and Sheen, with Carl trying to get out of it, but obviously failing, and the trio of them go to Retroland after hours, which I'm surprised it's actually closed, because if I remember well, Retroland initially did have an opening night, so I would assume they had, nighttime hours, though... maybe that was just for that one night. So maybe after opening night, maybe they do have daylight hours. And on top of that, over the course of the movie, the kids of Retroville wound up taking all of the rides in Retroland. So I wouldn't be surprised if they had to alter their hours to, get everything back in line. Although in an earlier episode, we saw Jimmy and Cindy in Retroland after hours, so I don't know. But then again, evening hours are different than late hours. So odds are maybe they go till maybe 9 and then close up shop, which would make more sense. So maybe I'm talking out of my ass. I probably am talking out of my ass. But I'm getting off topic. Back to the episode, which actually, you know what? No, I'll bring it. I'll stop. Back to the plot. Anyway, so the trio end up sneaking into Retroland, and of course, midnight comes around, and none of them see a phantom. So Jimmy just thinks that they've adamantly disproven the myth of the Phantom of Retroland. Only for Carl to tell Jimmy that he smells salami, and as such, the trio turn around, and there's the Phantom there to stalk them. As such, while Jimmy is still insistent that this can't be the Phantom, well, clearly this is still a creepy guy in a costume, and he's chasing these 3 kids, so they do end up running. And they end up hiding out on a ride. Specifically, it's that boat ride that's supposed to swing like a pendulum, but that's actually kind of what Jimmy has in mind. Hold on one second. Sorry about that. Hold on again. Sorry about that. Combination of a back spasm and my dog jumping on the bed just as I unpause the video. Hey, don't you just love all those technical difficulties my videos have? They just make the video. Anyway, getting off topic, back to the pendulum ride. It's basically the pirate ship ride that swings on a pendulum, and unfortunately, while Jimmy and co are safe on the ride, it's a 3-minute ride. Eventually the ride will stop and the Phantom will get them. However, Jimmy has a counter for that. As well, Goddard came along with Jimmy and his friends, and so Jimmy has Goddard and just basically take off the safety rails on the ride. And as such, with the ride basically now in free motion, it'll be able to swing around more freely, and well, since of course as the Earth moves, the pendulum will move also. That means that eventually the ride will knock into the Phantom, and knock into the Phantom it does, as it ends up smacking the Phantom right into a wall. Only for the Phantom to start groaning in a rather familiar voice. And as such, as Jimmy and his friends get off the ride, they go to see who the Phantom really is, and they unmask him to reveal Nick. Yep, Nick was here to basically just scare Jimmy and co. and make them think that the Phantom was real. As such, Jimmy thinks that everything's all good, this proves that there is no Phantom, only for a second Phantom to appear out of nowhere and start scaring the kids. And as everyone starts freaking out and running away, Goddard goes up to the second Phantom and ends up pulling off its cloak, and it's revealed that it's actually Cindy and Libby wearing a cloak with one sitting on the shoulders of another. As such, Jimmy asks why they dress as the Phantom, and Cindy admits she just kind of wanted to get one up on Jimmy because, well, he was being an ass earlier, and she kind of wanted to get back at him. Either way, though, it looks like everything is said and done. So as the group of kids just decide that they're going to leave, and yeah, Cindy does rightfully call Jimmy out that yeah, everyone knows the story of the Phantom of Retroland is nothing but fake, but it's fun to pretend, and they don't need someone like Jimmy going around ruining their fun. But however, as the group almost leaves Retroland, they're confronted by a third Phantom, only this one's mask is actually glowing. And as such, as Jimmy goes to confront this Phantom, he pulls off its cloak, only to find that it looks like a more scraggly monster underneath, and yeah, the group doesn't even stop to double check this one. All of them just run for it, Jimmy included, with Jimmy not even wanting to see if this one's fake or not. But it is fake. And the person behind this mask, it's Judy Neutron. Why is that? Well, going back to how Jimmy snuck out of his house that night to try and fool his parents into thinking he was still there, he activated a holographic projector. And his parents know, which I love this, his parents know there's a holographic projector in his room. And the holographic projector is supposed to play all these various scenes that you see right from Jimmy's doorway. Now, while initially Jimmy set the holographic projector to basically make it look like he was sleeping in his bed, well, the control console, which is in the wall next to Jimmy's room, had some trouble when it was going back into the wall. And as such, it wound up malfunctioning and wound up swapping out images to make it look like that Jimmy was playing on the playground at school. So, yeah, Hugh noticed that, called Judy's attention to it, and the pair of them realized that Jimmy snuck out. So rather than basically wait till Jimmy gets home and catch him in the act, Judy decided to go through with this little Scooby-Doo scheme to teach her son a lesson. And I kind of love that. As such, Hugh comes out of the woodworks, as throughout the episode he's been trying to find ways to alphabetize all the flavors of pie, and he thinks he's finally got it down, only for the episode to end as the real Phantom of Retroland just appears out of nowhere, mentions a pie flavor that he forgot, and then as the Neutron parents realize that there's a literal ghost behind them, they run for the hills. So there you go. But that brings us to my son, the hamster. What's going on in this episode is that Jimmy has created a pair of, well, teleporting pods, which are obviously recycled from washing machines, just for laundry. But point is, Jimmy wants to test them because if they work, he'll be able to teleport anywhere. I assume. I don't know. It looks like they're meant to basically be intermingling between each other, which means you'd have to move one of these pods from the other. It'd basically be like that one episode of The Simpsons Treehouse of Horror where the Simpsons got those teleporters from Professor Frink, so I do not know. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. Point is, Jimmy wants to test them. However, getting in his way this time around is Carl, who wants to show Jimmy his new pet. In this case, it's a hamster that he's named Mr. Wuggles. And while Jimmy does do Carl the courtesy of letting him into his lab via a trapdoor, he doesn't really want to engage with him quite yet. He's more concerned with getting these teleporters up and running. Unfortunately, though, Goddard, while a robotic dog, is still a dog, and when Goddard sees Mr. Wuggles, all he sees it as is prey. And as such, Goddard does let Mr. Wuggles out of its cage, and then proceeds to chase Mr. Wuggles around the lab. And what I kind of love is that Jimmy is so not paying attention to what's going on that he basically just tells Carl, "Hey Carl, can you get your hamster under control?" Even though it was his fucking dog that started everything. Either way, Carl tries catching Mr. Wuggles and fails, but eventually Mr. Wuggles ends up running into the other teleporter, while Jimmy's inside the other. And as Carl is trying to reorient himself, as at one point he cornered Mr. Wuggles and then he ran away, which caused Carl to himself all over, he ends up accidentally hitting the activation button for the teleporters, and as such, both Jimmy and Mr. Wuggles are trapped in the pods as they both activate. And once they deactivate, well, I guess my Simpsons Trails of Horror comparison was more appropriate than I thought, because as a result of this of the mixed-up teleportation, both Jimmy and Mr. Wuggles swap heads. So Jimmy's head is on Mr. Wuggles' body, and Mr. Wuggles' head is on Jimmy's body. And while the head that's on the body is the one in control, so Jimmy is now has a hamster body, while Mr. Wuggles has Jimmy's body. Well, there are situations that are not exactly desirable. Well, at least for Jimmy. Mr. Wuggles seems to adapt to his situation rather fine, as he's able to navigate his way out of the lab, even though Carl runs out running and screaming, and he ends up meeting up with Hugh, who wants to take Jimmy out for a Father's Sunday so they can just bond. And while Hugh is able to basically realize that whatever happened to Jimmy must be an experiment, he basically just thinks that the kid with the hamster head is still his son in mind as well as body. So, Mr. Wuggles just kind of rolls with it because, hey, day out, whatever. So, while Mr. Wuggles does still do the random hamster eccentricities that a hamster would have, like nibble on stuff and so forth, he does seem to at least be aware enough to know, hey, this guy's taking you to a park. Let's go have fun. And so, basically, Mr. Wuggles and Hugh just have a day together. However, Jimmy, on the other hand, is not doing so well. As well, he is consciously aware of what the hell's happened to him. For whatever reason, he also has the instincts of a hamster. So he unconsciously scratches himself behind the ear with his bottom legs. He has an attraction to nuts, and he even likes getting his chin scratched. Unfortunately, though, this is not the most of his problems, because Goddard still sees Jimmy as prey, and at first ends up chasing Jimmy to the point where Jimmy is chased out of his lab. And unfortunately, again, when he goes to his house, because his mom made a pie with nuts in it, and that attracted Jimmy's attention, Judy doesn't even realize that the little hamster has her son's head, and she ends up throwing him out of the house. Oh, thankfully, Jimmy is able to meet up with Carl and Sheen, and while they think that Jimmy being a hamster is adorable, they do at least agree to help Jimmy. Unfortunately, though, before Jimmy can relay a plan, a hawk comes out of nowhere and takes Jimmy back to its nest with the intent of, well, eating him. Thankfully, Jimmy's able to get out of that mess by running to a nearby satellite dish and punching in a code that's a homing code so that Goddard will come and get him. And thankfully, Goddard does come and does scare the eagle off. And this time around, Jimmy is able to convince Goddard that he is Jimmy. As such, while Goddard does put Jimmy in his mouth, it's not for the intent to eat him. It's just so that Jimmy has something to ride in. And as such, Jimmy and Goddard fly around Retroville looking for Mr. Wuggles, and they at least realize, oh, Mr. Wuggles is my dad. Then we have nothing to worry about. As such, the pair of them go back to Jimmy's lab with Carl and Sheen chasing after as they saw them flying by. But now there's the matter of getting Mr. Wuggles back to the lab, because if they want to fix this, they need to put Mr. Wuggles and Jimmy back inside the teleporters. And unfortunately, that's easier said than done, because Mr. Wuggles isn't just going to walk into the lab. Not helped by the fact that when Hugh brings Mr. Wuggles back to the Neutron home, Judy can immediately tell that this kid with the hamster head is not her son and basically wants it out. And as such, Carl is afraid that Mr. Wuggles will get hurt, but thankfully, one brain blast later, Jimmy does have an idea to get Mr. Wuggles' attention. As he gets the cage that Carl brought it in, and, well, using his shrink ray, he enlarges the thing so that basically the tube structure that's a part of the enclosure basically extends right up to the well, blanking on the word again, even though I know it. Give me a second. It goes up to the clubhouse portion of Jimmy's lab. I don't know why I forgot the word clubhouse. That's an easy one. And basically, Carl is able to get Mr. Wuggles' attention, and, well, Mr. Wuggles sees the tubes, and he's just trying to go crawl through them. As such, the Mr. Wuggles crawls all the way through, and thankfully the other part of the tube is located in one of the teleporter devices, and so all it takes is Mr. Wuggles going in place, them reactivating the kids reactivating the teleporters. Bada bing, bada boom, Jimmy and Mr. Wuggles are back to normal. As such, Jimmy goes back outside to meet with his parents. Judy's just kind of has a freak out as she doesn't know what the hell to make of this. Hugh thinks that he had a good father-son bonding day with his son, and after Jimmy leaves, we see Carl once again just nuzzling Mr. Wuggles, happy to have his pet back, while Sheen grabs a lizard off the ground with the intent of using the teleporters to swap their heads. So what can you do? But anyway, what are my thoughts on these episodes? Well, first, The Phantom of Retroland. This one's a fun one. At its core, it's basically a Scooby-Doo plot. Of course, it's not like a regular... It's not like a Scooby-Doo plot in the sense of, oh, there's a mystery to solve. More is just some silly, spooky-ish fun. As we got Jimmy and Co. going to Retroland after hours, trying to disprove the existence of a phantom, meeting said phantom, finding a creative way to outsmart the phantom before they unmasked the phantom and learned that it was never a phantom at all, but just a bunch of people wearing different costumes. So, you know, that's kind of where but that's ultimately where the Scooby-Doo comparisons begin and end. As ultimately, it's still a Jimmy Neutron episode, and I kind of like that this episode showcases more of Jimmy's arrogance, in a sense. Because, well, we know that Jimmy is a good kid. He does have, no pun intended here, a big head about certain things. He does tend to think he's smarter than other people in other regards. That doesn't mean that he's a show-offy sort, as he can be humble with his inventions, especially when he knows that showing them off does sometimes draw too much attention onto him. But at the same time, he does have his tendencies where there are times where his tendencies to be the smartest kid in the room do kind of make him come across as an arrogant jerk, especially in the case of him basically calling out Nick's oral presentation as not even being appropriately researched or being about a real historical figure. And I will at least agree that, yeah, Nick should not have done his presentation on basically an urban legend, but that doesn't give Jimmy the right to call him out in front of the class. Miss Fowl should have called that shit out. Hell, she called Jimmy out on his presentation being too long, so I feel like Miss Fowl should have at least told Nick, Look, we were supposed to actually talk about a real historical figure, not an urban legend. And so that, I feel, would have been the most appropriate response. But no, Jimmy had to be an ass about it. So I do feel like that him getting scared a bit by Nick, Cindy, Libby, and yes, even his own mom, it's some good comeuppance, and I do actually think it's rather appropriate. So I enjoy that. It's fun. I like that. On top of that, it once again is nice seeing Jimmy actually utilizing his smarts and try and take out Nick as the Phantom, and it's actually a nice bit of Chekhov's gun, as the episode opened with him showcasing the pendulum experiment, but then likewise, in the climax of the episode, when Jimmy and his friends end up confronting Nick while he's in costume, they use that same pendulum experiment to, you know, get outsmart and outwit him and basically take him down. Which I like that. I like stuff like that. I like when stuff like that pays off for an episode. So I do genuinely think that's enjoyable. And again, seeing the conga line of different people dressed up as the Phantom, I think was genuinely enjoyable. I thought that was actually pretty funny. And I do kind of like the slight, like I said, throughout the episode there was a slight running gag where Hugh was trying to list off all the flavors of pie in alphabetical order, and basically everybody knew better than him, or at least Judy and the Phantom. When Jimmy's parents are putting him to bed, Hugh talks about how he lists them all, and I think he said either cherry as his first pie flavor, and then goes through them to try and get some sleep. But then, likewise, Judy goes, "What about apple or blackberry or boysenberry?" And she, as Jimmy's parents are going back to their bedroom, she actually lists more flavors of pie than even Hugh knows about. So I find that funny. And so at the end of the episode, when he says he finally made a list and thinks it's all good, only for the real Phantom to appear, and says, "What about blackberry?" I don't know. I love that. That's fun. I love that. And I actually do like seeing Jimmy's parents kind of get in on the fun of this episode. It's not like to the point where they're heavily involved in the plot this time around, but in this case, I actually really like that when Judy realizes that Jimmy snuck out of the house and tried to use his holographic projector to cover his tracks, her response is, "Okay, he went out to the Retroland to find a Phantom, then we'll give him a Phantom." It's just like it's just kind of, it's clear, it's stooping down a level, but it's fun seeing her kind of stoop down to that level. It's enjoyable. I love it. And by the end, when they actually meet the real Phantom, it's fun. I like it. So when it comes down to it, it's just this enjoyable episode. Although if I have to give a little nitpick, it's possibly surrounding the legend of the Phantom of Retroland, as the story that Nick told was that a bunch of kids wound up cutting through Retroland in 1997, and that's when they first encountered the Phantom. Now, again, this is a nitpick. It really doesn't ruin the episode. It's just like a minor continuity flub, and probably not even that. Like I said, it's an urban legend, so odds are the story's been changed over the years, but I thought Retroland was a recent fixture in Retroville, especially since that the opening night for Retroland was the Jimmy Neutron movie, which they have talked, which is canon and doesn't take place that far away. It takes place at least near enough in the past that that was probably still recent-ish. So I don't know. It's weird. Point is, point is, it's a little dumb. Point is, maybe a little bit of a continuity error, but again, that's a nitpick at best. It's not really anything. So when it comes down to it, it's just a silly, enjoyable episode with some honestly fun Scooby-Doo-ish antics. So I like it. As for My Son the Hamster, this one, it's just all right for me. This one is not like an awful episode by any means, but it's just there. Just there. Now, normally when I say that when something is just there, it normally is just, I usually say it in a negative connotation. And there is a slight negative connotation for My Son the Hamster, but the difference between like this one and other ones is that it does feel like you still get some substance with this one, as it is mostly just there to kind of have some hijinks in place. We see Jimmy was stuck with Mr. Wuggles' body and the troubles that it causes him as he follows the hamster instincts, we'll call them, seeks out nuts, likes getting scratches, and scratches himself in ways that only a hamster can do, or likewise seeing what Mr. Wuggles does in Jimmy's body as he has the day out with Hugh, and they go to Retroland. They try to play baseball, only for Hugh to smack Mr. Wuggles with 2 consecutive baseballs, and both times it looks like it hurt, so what can you do? Or likewise, just seeing Judy freaking out when she sees that Mr. Wuggles with her son's body. It's just some silly antics. Again, doesn't really feel, it's just kind of fun. I like it. It doesn't really feel, again, by the end, it doesn't feel like a lot was truly gained aside from adding another invention to Jimmy's roster, but didn't really need to have anything to it, so to speak. It's just a silly little side adventure, and can't really fault it for that. It's enjoyable, it's goofy, the antics are fun. Is it an episode that I would probably watch again? Maybe not. It's not, again, it's not like the antics are like the best that I've seen in the show. It's just a kind of silly fly scenario, like the fly scenario. And like I said, the plot is kind of similar to an episode of The Simpsons Trails of Horror, only whereas that one had horror comedy in mind, and this one's just straight up comedy. I just find it, again, the episode itself is just there, but not in a bad sense. I still enjoy myself watching the episode. It's silly and goofy and fun, and like I said, and I do kind of like seeing Jimmy kind of utilize Mr. Wuggles' own natural instincts, because they do showcase that despite Jimmy and Mr. Wuggles sharing a few of the other's instincts, they're still predominantly themselves, and I like seeing Jimmy basically use that to get Mr. Wuggles back in place. Also, I find it adorable that when Goddard does realize that the hamster running around is its owner, Goddard immediately turns friendly. I don't know why. It's adorable, okay? I like dogs, sue me. Point is, it's just fine. It's just fine. Nothing fantastic, nothing great. I don't see myself watching it again. I don't see myself going back to this episode as much, because it's, again, just a sort of their episode, but as sort of their episodes go, it's fine. It's just fine. It's goofy and silly and acts as a nice little distraction. So that's all I really can say for it. So yeah, Phantom of Retroland, some genuinely fun, silly, spooky fun, and I say spooky in air quotes there. It's not like it's genuinely terrifying. It's just, like I said, just kids spooky stuff. And My Son the Hamster, just fine. Nothing to write home about, but nothing really bad either. And I did find myself enjoying myself a little bit while watching it. So yeah, overall, both segments are enjoyable in their own ways. So yeah, I think that's really all I have to say. I hope you enjoyed the rambling. I hope you enjoyed the technical difficulties. If you want more technical difficulties, be sure to watch more of my vlogs. I get worse. And as always, I hope you have a great Friday. Take care.